Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me for the Energy Storage World Forum's live webinar on EPCs entitled How Can EPCs Be Unique to Their Customers with the Energy Storage Projects? I'm James Frith, and I'm an energy storage analyst at Bloomberg New Energy Finance, the leading research and analysis company working in the energy sector. And I'm looking forward to having a very lively discussion this afternoon, discussing the role of EPCs in the energy storage market. And I'd like you all to get involved in the discussion as well. Once we've had the panel, we'll open up to questions and answers. So if you could save your questions till then, that would be great. So the energy storage space is rapidly changing, and I think the EPC segment of value chain is particularly interesting. We're seeing a wide range of companies offering different products and services. And it's one of the areas that was identified at Bloomberg New Energy Finance's Future of the Energy Summit as being an area in the kind of energy storage value chain that can offer significant cost savings to energy storage projects as we go forward. So with that in mind, I'm delighted to be joined here this afternoon by Tim Muller, who's the CTO at Be Electric, and Stefan Schaus, who is Director of Business Development for the EMEA region at Wärtsilä Greensmith. We'll hopefully be joined later by Matteo Rizzi, Director of Global Sales for Photovoltaics and Battery Energy Storage for NIDEC. So, I mean, just to get started, Tim, would you mind telling us your company's interest in the energy storage sector?
Electric is originally a free field and utility scale PV EPC company, and we identified, I think 7 or 8 years ago, that we won't be able to install PV anymore in the late or the mid future without significant energy storage next to it, be it for peak shaving or be it for grid or frequency stability. Yeah, and that's when we started to investigate in that and develop products. And now it has become for us a separate section, installing and realizing battery projects as an own business segment in Europe, where while PV is more and more difficult in Europe, so and battery is a real growth sector or growth region. So yeah, that's why battery is very important for us, and it will also it was also an enabler for our PV business around the world. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And so, Stefan, the same question to you. Could you just quickly explain Wärtsilä and Greensmith's interest in the energy storage sector?
Yeah, so Greensmith Energy Management Systems was a company, or is a company based out of the US. Now, since July 3rd, the wholly owned subsidiary by our new corporate parent Wärtsilä from Finland. We are part, or we're forming the energy storage division of Wärtsilä Energy Solutions, and Wärtsilä Energy Solutions has been around for quite some time, has installed 63 gigawatt of gas generation assets around the world. Greensmith brings to the table now new possibilities for hybridization as well as standalone energy storage systems, full EPC capability to fulfill turnkey projects on a global basis. And yeah, so my position here is based out of Vienna, Austria, the EMEA region, and we're looking forward to increase the energy storage presence also here in Europe as well as Middle East and Africa. Okay,
fantastic. So there we have it, kind of two companies that have entered the storage market from very different directions. And I guess to people who aren't familiar with the EPC sector and energy storage in particular, it could sound then now that your companies are offering almost the same thing. So Tim, starting with you, could you maybe kind of describe what you would say your company's unique selling point is within the energy storage sector?
Yeah. I think that it connects or is somehow connected to what I said before, that we are coming from the utility scale PV sector. So that's also where we are coming from technically. We are building battery, or a lot of what we are, a lot of our expertise in the battery sector is based on what we have learned in the PV. So we are like the first company offering 1500 volt battery solutions, outdoor inverters. We are using PV inverters for battery solutions. So we have the appropriate low or attractive price tag and high volume, high quality. We also have dating from the time of PV, or having developed that during our PV business, a very comprehensive O&M solution. So we have a dedicated O&M team, we have a lot of procedures in O&M and so on. We have a 24/7 surveillance of all our plants of PV as for battery. For battery, it's even more important because it's usually a 8,700 hours asset for frequency response. We have comprehensive warranties and contracts in place in order to secure the business case of the customer. That's also what we have learned in PV. That's very important. And yeah, we have a pretty future-proof system, so that very often systems need to be adapted to new business models and so on. And that's what we try to implement as good as we can to our best into our systems.
I mean, so just building on kind of what you mentioned earlier, that you've gained a lot coming from the solar market, the solar EPC market, and then moving to the energy storage market. How does the role of the EPC change for the energy storage market? And did you encounter any barriers moving from kind of an EPC for solar to an EPC for energy storage?
Let's put it like that. From the point of project realization, I think it's rather similar as a project. It has less civil risk, but more engineering and so on. So it's somehow comparable. Barriers. It is a totally new business model actually there behind. So yes, that's the main barrier actually. So coming from solar, it was like you have a rock, like a feed-in tariff, which is secured for 20 years. So there's nearly no risk. Now with batteries, you're entering a market, be it a frequency response market or whatever. And this is, for example, in Germany, a weekly auction. So how to base a 20 or 10-year business model on a weekly auction. That's like a barrier. You have to convince your customers that that's a good, viable business model. Yeah. And you have to convince the banks that that's viable to finance. So that was and is the greatest barrier still. And again, the next barrier is like find scalable business models, right? So frequency response in Europe is a business model, but it's somehow limited. In the US as well. Now, what are the next? So for the moment, we are hopping from niche to niche, finding very good ones. But it's not yet at a size, or had not grown to be a market size, which would be comparable to PV. Let's put it like that. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's interesting there to, you mentioned, this is something I think we'll come back to later, the business model for storage, because depending on what sector you're looking at, I guess maybe in the UK, at the moment it seems like it's quite obvious because we've got the kind of we've had the EFR auctions, so it seems like a clear business model. But yeah, it's interesting that you said it's not so clear. So anyway, we'll come back to that later. But Stefan, moving on to you, what would you say is Greensmith and Wartsilla's kind of unique selling point? And I think you kind of mentioned this earlier with Wartsilla. It's got kind of a lot of knowledge of large projects, but could you elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, particularly, I mean, what led to the acquisition from Wartsilla was the added capability of energy storage on a utility scale or on a grid scale. With the experience that Greensmith has gathered over the past 10 years, there is a unique ability to combine any kind of energy storage, battery technology, or for that matter, mechanical or other energy storage technologies together for a customer solution, and integrate all this together with a control system that is capable of maximizing the performance of this asset. In exactly as Tim was saying, the biggest difficulty right now is that you don't have 20-year offtake agreements. Instead, you rather find yourself in a merchant situation where when you're lucky, you get a 4-year contract. So that makes it, of course, a little bit harder for the EPC / even for the project development side to attract investment at reasonable cost of capital. Yeah, everybody still price in risk factors, and you have to filter out risk adverse versus risk taking investors, and that is slowing down the process a little bit. On the other hand, also to second what Tim was saying on the market, you find the pockets here and there. It's not let's say a generally accepted market segment as it is with solar or wind, or classical thermal generation for that matter, and energy storage particularly is seen as typically these days as a buffer solution. So short duration, I mean, it cures particular frequency problems on the grid, maybe some voltage droop support or congestion relief on grid infrastructure. But in general, we do see that the markets are opening up and the interest is nevertheless very strong. We do see that more and more business cases come into place.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Again, the kind of business case and coming up there again, so it sounds like that's quite important. So I'd just like to take this moment to introduce Matteo Rizzi from Nidec, and he's head of director of global sales for photovoltaics and battery energy storage systems. So Matteo, would you kind of just have a moment to explain Nidec's interest in the energy storage market?
Yes. Good afternoon. Sorry about the day, but I have some problem with the connection from Milan office. So as you said, I'm in charge for the global sales of Nidec. Nidec is a Japanese company that is involved in automation. It's a $28 billion market cap company with $13 billion revenue. And in the renewable, we are a power conversion system manufacturer, PMS and EMS manufacturer, and EPC contractor. This is our core business. And in the renewable, we are active not only in the battery storage, but also in the PV and in the electric vehicle charger.
Okay. And so then you've kind of explained there your interests. How would you differentiate your business or Nidec's business from that of kind of Wärtsilä and Greensmith and Be Electric?
Yeah. So on our side, I mean, we as a PC, we have the chance to deliver a system to integrate components that we manufacture on our own, since we are vertically integrated on what we consider as the key of the equipment of the battery storage, that is the power conversion system and the PMS and EMS, so the control. So on this, I think that it's very important to be vertically integrated and to design a solution that are tailored to the project according to a different project application. This is the first topic that for us it's a ground where we think that we may differentiate from other competitors. And the second one, that we can propose a value proposition that could also include our involvement in the project development in some country where we are active. On top of it, still in the value proposition, we can provide construction financing that we see that in some country and some specific project environment, it may support the due diligence of the bank prior to achieve the project financing, the financial close. and/or in some cases we can be equity partner in the project for a short term. So this is what we consider an expanded value proposition that is on top of delivering just a turnkey system, as most of the players are doing right now.
Okay, so I mean, so that's quite interesting that you're kind of saying that you'll do more than just a turnkey system. You'll almost do the whole package from you're acting as a developer almost. And on that note, I just wonder on that. Sorry, I wonder on that note. At what stage do you think EPCs should start participating in energy storage projects? Should they be there from the very early development stage when you're looking at kind of sites and the kind of systems required, or do you think it's more if you're just in the EPC section, somebody should contract you in and you go in and do what they've asked you to do?
Of course, I think based on my experience that for the EPC to enter into early stage, into the project development, to have the chance to develop the project according to the technical configuration that the EPC thinks it's the right one, it's the one optimized that can enable to optimize the delivery schedule, the performance of the plant. It's a good opportunity. For sure, for the EPC contractor, this might be interesting, subject to having a win-win agreement, in order not to develop the full project and then, when the project is permitted, be in a position a bit uncomfortable, where the investor and the IPP can select a different technology partner or different EPC contractor. So as long as there is a win-win approach with the investor, the EPC is strategic to start its own involvement in the project in the early stage, and not to jump in when the project is fully permitted with maybe some technical specification or some constraints that may have been sorted out in an early stage.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe a comment from my side. I absolutely agree to Matteo. And since we are a pretty technically focused company or technology focused company, we had it a couple of times that the tender document was even changed after we started to discuss, and then it was retendered. It was still issued a new document for all participants, because very often, since the EPC companies are the companies really on the market for the moment, and so very often, like consulting companies do not have haven't done so many projects as the EPCs. So it is very valuable to have early exchange of ideas and discussions in order to make the project viable for the customer. Because in the end, it's in the interest of everybody. If the probability of the project is increased, that it will really be realized increased due to our technical knowledge, it is beneficial for everybody. Because in the end, it will really come.
Yeah. Of course, I fully agree. This is a new market, it's an emerging market for sure. I mean, there is no such a consultant, and also from the project developer and/or from IPP perspective, it's very valuable to have the EPC on board from early stage. What I was a bit highlighting is that in some cases, if there is not any win-win agreement or any project development agreement, it might be that the EPC could be supporting all the project development, all the technical specification, all the fine-tuning, and then it could be part of the beauty contest opened by the investor together with many other players. This is just the wrong side of the coin. So it was just a way to raise this issue. But for sure, the EPC are happy to support and to make sure that they can share their experience and expertise with the investor in order to make sure that they can land in a ground that could be, let's say, efficient.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's interesting to kind of hear that about consultants won't have as much knowledge on emerging markets, and the thought of emerging markets brings me back to what was mentioned by Stefan and Tim earlier about the business model. And how sometimes it's not always clear what the best business model to use is. And so what I want to know, what I think is interesting is, Stefan, for example, how would your company offer, say, a better business model than Nidec or the Electric?
Well, it's not so much about offering a better business model over somebody else. What it probably is basically the optimization of that particular business case, in particular that market segments that you're going for, recommending in very early stages. So as a full EPC, I second the opinions from Tim and Matteo that you want to be, as long as you know that you have a as termed situation in place, you want to be advising on what you see in the market, and we had also our fair share of experience now in various markets with these business cases. And as we all know, the individual business case alone can be optimized, or the technology can be optimized actually to follow that business model and give the best results, the best returns for the investment, not only by the capex price, but also by O&M price, performance of the systems, but also in the way the whole system is controlled and is reacting to these signals. And you get, as classical power infrastructure, you're always performance scored. You get a scorecard from every off-taker in the industry. So of course you want to yield best results, because that is what the shareholder of that project, what brings the value and the returns. And having said this, from the perspective of what Wärtsilä and Greensmith is bringing to the table, we have been studying business cases from the outset, simply because we have we started out with a control system platform, and of course it's a natural to start this. We have now over, I believe, over 50 business case rules analyzed in various markets around the globe. We have a very good modeling and simulation scheme, so that we know beforehand what the results will be on the returns of when running business case and combining them with each other. And so as such, we are of course advising our clients on the best approach as we see it. So taking off a lot of the burden of the customer to have to do that.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It sounds like we've got kind of three companies that have entered the EPC market from very different directions, but it sounds like you're all agreed on the kind of role that you're playing now and the kind of added value that an EPC can have over, say, a consultant. So and it's good to hear that you're all aware of the kind of full project scale, which you would hope you would, and kind of thinking about projects and how they can vary. There's obviously quite a lot of interest at the moment, or a lot of talk anyway, about the possibility of using, say, flow batteries and stuff like this. So just quickly, a quick fire round here, and starting with you, Tim. Can you just summarize the different technologies that your company has used in energy storage projects?
Yeah, well, we have used three types of battery, or three main types of battery so far. So it's redox flow, vanadium redox flow. Then for a couple of years, we were building our own lead acid batteries. So we were buying cells and building everything by ourselves. So like we created the BMS for lead acid, an own container solution, and so on. So that was a very integrated and scalable solution. And nowadays we are using nearly exclusively lithium-ion batteries, mainly NMC, nickel, manganese, cobalt, a bit of lithium iron phosphate, but mainly NMC, because that's the most widely used in the market. And that comes back to the last question you had. With these batteries, we can offer pretty comprehensive warranties. That's a real advantage of that battery type, because it's like all the main companies in the market offer that. And so we can deliver very proven technology with a comprehensive set of warranties to support the business case.
Yeah. Fantastic. I think we'll, again, try and come back to the warranties again a bit later. But
Okay.
yeah, Stefan, the same question to you. Could you just quickly summarize the kind of technologies that you've used?
Yeah, so we have basically been integrating now 14 different technologies. Of course, these are variations of lithium, starting from lithium titanate, as Tim was saying, also the lithium NMC type, lithium iron phosphor and such. But also on the flow battery side, we have been integrating with zinc iron as well as vanadium redox. We have been done sodium sulfur, also quite some retrofit on this. We have done sodium nickel chloride integration, and so depending on the task at hand, what the power problem to be solved should be, we're selecting the technology. And I can add, right now, at least on a grid scale side, the biggest problems right now are power centric. They're not energy centric problems to be solved. So that means rather short duration at a certain rated power level, and these are typically yielding to a lithium ion technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And it's interesting that you mentioned that at the moment it's very power centric. I think here at Bloomberg and Energy Finance, we agree that it is very power centric at the moment, but going forward, you know, I think we'll see more of the kind of energy systems being needed. But the question there is whether, you know, these other technologies such as vanadium flow can compete with lithium ion in terms of cost. But I think that's maybe a question for another day. So Matteo, just moving on to you quickly, can you summarize the different technologies that Nidec used?
Yes, so Nidec is much more focused on the utility scale projects, since we built up as EPC the STEAG project in Germany that is 90 meg, 138 megawatt hour. We built up as EPC in UK with EDF 49 meg, 36 megawatt hour. With E.ON in UK as well, 10 meg, 6 megawatt hour. So we focus on a very utility scale project where the lithium ion is prevailing due to the comfort of the investor, due to the comfort of the lender in the project financing regime. Having said that, we had the chance also to deal with some other technology, such as zinc air, such as vanadium, such as sodium in Italy with Forterna, it is Italian TSO. I mean, we are very open to new technology, new emerging technology. As APC, and I think that my colleague can share this approach, for sure we are a bit concerned with this new technology, since the track record that they can rely on is very low in terms of size, in terms of duration. So for us, that we should take care about the full turnkey and the full liability. It's a bit a situation where we do not feel so confident in new technology. But nevertheless, our R&D is very committed in checking and assessing this new opportunity, and also negotiating with this new potential technology partner security package that can make sure that we can feel confident in taking responsibility based on such a new battery that have a very low track record. So the market is opening up. For the time being, it sounds that lithium ion is the prevailing, and I don't see, to be honest, except in case of specific application, I don't see any chance for any other technology at utility scale to get a seat in this market. But we will see. I mean, we will see, and we are open to consider also new technology.
Yeah. So I mean, again, kind of Matteo has mentioned I guess the risk involved with new technologies. And so that kind of brings me on to the question of, and Stefan, I'll start with you here. How can EPCs protect themselves from these risks, from technologies that aren't necessarily so well tested? And quite often, some of these newer technologies anyway are coming from smaller companies that, you know, if something were to go wrong with the technology, you can't be guaranteed that they'll still be here in 10 years' time. So how do you think Greensmith and Wärtsilä deal with that?
So yeah, particularly, I mean, we will be focusing for any kind of commercial application that or for commercial projects that we're doing on, definitely relying on a back-to-back guaranteed solution, because that is what we owe to any investor or sponsor of a project. Having said this, of course, when you know, new technologies, when they come online and they're beyond the pilot and demonstration phase, and you know, and gain traction in the market, we will definitely be looking at those as well. Typically, particularly as you were saying, a lot of the companies are either venture backed or they are on a smaller funding scale, and they need to raise capital in order to stay in business. That's always a very difficult position to be in. This can be overcome by outsourcing, let's say, manufacturing and key component supply capabilities, where you can offload that going out of business problem with a capable manufacturing site who can maybe still keep or still continue to produce spare parts and such. However, this needs to be looked at into detail, and primarily I would say we will go with large bankable solutions. Yeah.
It's interesting though that you mentioned kind of putting the manufacturing with contracting it out to companies that can back up, I guess, the manufacturing of spare parts if the company goes bankrupt, because it's actually what we see quite a lot of flow battery companies doing now. They're outsourcing their manufacturing to companies such as Jabil, which I guess gives them some of that reassurance. But yeah, so thanks for that. And kind of Tim, I guess the same question to you, and maybe this is, you know, something that's kind of quite relatable to you, maybe starting off in lead acid and moving to lithium ion. Is that kind of to do with the reliability of the technology being used?
Well, actually, that's two questions. First question, why did we move from lead acid to lithium ion? The answer is pretty clear, actually. Lead acid is a good solution for certain applications, for example, frequency response. Lead acid will show you a very long lifetime, but you are lacking flexibility. Like deep discharge applications are just not suitable for lead acid. And even if they don't do it for the moment, most customers do frequency response, be it continental Europe, be it UK. They want to have flexibility for future applications. So that's the main reason why we moved, or why a lot of our customers moved to lithium ion, and we support that. So we are technology agnostic, actually. So that's first thing. Second was your former question, how do we protect ourselves against low ESS performance, right? So, well, part of the answer is we are using a lot of equipment which we have been using for PV for years now. We have been EPC for 1.9 gigawatt of PV. So that's where we get the inverters from, the cabling, and our design criteria. Containers are manufactured by ourselves, so we have a close quality control. And batteries, well, actually, we are concentrating on a few suppliers. On the stationary market, very prominent is Samsung. We are working with them. They have a special technology. They use prismatic cells with a large electrolyte overfill. So they are very long-living batteries. Actually, they give us a warranty down to 60% of residual capacity. So this is usually up to 20 years. So that's a real good commitment from Samsung. So that's where we are trusting them. And maybe the last part of the answer is we are probably for the moment Europe's largest integrator of electric vehicle batteries for stationary purposes. So we have a very close focus on what the automobile colleagues are using as batteries. We are using them in our system, but we know pretty well what cells they are using. So yeah, let's say part of the answer is being up to date.
Okay, and just kind of quickly going back to, you mentioned Samsung can kind of offer you, well, we'll say that the cells will retain 60% of their capacity over 20 years of lifetime. Does that mean that you can offer 20-year warranties?
Up to 20 years we may offer, yes.
Yes, okay. It's interesting. I think.
But that's possible. and that's
Yeah.
like down to 60%. Usually, like the 60%, where do they come from? It's usually lithium-ion batteries have a certain behavior of what they call drop dead point, when they really their residual cycle number drops very sharply to zero at a certain point, and that is like a non-linear aging behavior. And we opted or we qualified our suppliers by the linearity of their aging behavior. And yeah, what I wanted to say, without like lifting somebody to heaven, it's just I want to say we have qualified our suppliers by that, and we found which is very long living actually.
Yeah, fantastic. So Matteo, again, the same question to you about, how can you guarantee the kind of performance of the technology? And I think maybe for Nidec, this is slightly different, because I know you have some pilot projects in Italy, which I guess the funding is coming from not from private backers. So maybe that gives you a bit of flexibility with the projects or the technologies you can use.
No, no, sorry, didn't get you the topic about Italy. Say it again.
So I believe you have some technology testing going on in Italy.
Yes.
Yes, and so that funding is not coming from private backers. So does that give you more flexibility with the different technologies that you can use and the risk you can take?
Yeah, I mean, in Italy we have several workshops. We have 4 workshops. And we have R&D, and we have a testing equipment. That's why, as I was saying, we are very open to new technology. We are used to check them. But having said that, what we are used to provide the investor with is performance warranty back to what the battery manufacturer can provide us in terms of capacity degradation. So this is a key topic for us. And in terms of risk, if to the extent that there are some battery manufacturer with a new technology, we are used to check how to hedge this risk through security package that could be pledged on the share of this startup company, or insurance package. So I mean, we can deal with this risk, but we need to be protected in a way. So important, for sure, that out of a very big group of new technology emerging, or mainly new redox, that are coming out, that are proposed by very small startup. I mean, it's important to assess and eventually to select the technology and the company that is behind where to eventually to run the risk. This is very important.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It sounds there then that, I mean, obviously being a large supplier is incredibly useful, because it means that you can rely on them more, because you know that their technology has been more tested and has better warranties. So it'll be interesting going forward to see whether kind of, I guess the lithium battery market is quite consolidated at the moment, but whether it stays that way or we see other companies coming up.
Yeah, the point, if I may, the point is, I mean, the testing is fine. In some cases, we can run some simulation that simulate the performance over a long period, 20 years. But in any case, this cannot replace, let's say, operation for long periods. So I mean, to the extent that this new technology have a very low track record in terms of capacity and in terms of duration, meaning that the duration is very limited. Yeah. I mean, it's very difficult to get comfort out of a test. A test can provide some comfort, but for sure it could not be enough to make sure that the contractor can feel confident about providing performance, relying on that test. Just relying on that test.
Yeah, and I agree. I guess without actually getting some field data, it's hard to know exactly how anything's going to perform. So I think we've spent quite a lot of time talking about the EPC space in general, and I guess the majority of what we've talked about has been larger utility scale projects. But I think there is also the kind of C&I space, which is going to become more important as we move forward. I think we predict that by 2021, CNI, behind the meter CNI energy storage projects will account for 50% of installed capacity. So that's about 10 gigawatts, and that's globally. But it's maybe, and from what you said earlier, the business case for utility scale storage isn't always that clear. So I wonder what the business case is for CNI storage projects, and are CNI customers aware of this, or are EPC contractors or developers going out and finding CNI sites that potentially could benefit from it? So Stefan, maybe you could dive in here and tell us if you've done any CNI work and how you identify customers.
Yeah, so I'm wearing several hats on this. Yeah, so in my past experience, I have been focusing pretty much on the CNI segment, behind the meter, finding that business case, and of course that is partially incentivized, like in California, for example, with the ITC credit. In Germany, as we know, that small commercial is still viable. The question is, since we're here probably all large scale EPC companies, you do get a different setup, and even when you get a sizable CNI segment, it is a lot of special analysis for that business case to be done. Once you have that solution, of course, there's a slightly different sizing of energy storage system in general to be observed, and but you really have to look there case by case. If at least you can summarize it region by region, that's very beneficial. In the US, that's taking place. There's definitely a large, relatively homogeneous market segment for CNI, and the size of the customer problem to be solved is also very interesting in terms of sizing for almost grid scale applications. In Europe, it's a little bit scattered depending on which country you're in. As you know, there's not really an arbitrage play behind the meter in most jurisdictions. But then again, you come to Southeast Asia, or you even come to Africa. That becomes very viable business cases. Yeah? And I do agree that when you talk about the CNI segment, that energy storage, either as a mitigator between high cost of otherwise generated power, or versus a local supply, can be offset. I think the key for CNI segment will also be the generation side. Yeah, be it, yes.
On the generation side, and I realize we're running out of time here if we want to get some questions in. So I just wanted to kind of ask Matteo here, not quite on the generation side, but obviously the kind of balance system and the power conversion system is going to be different for a CNI project compared to a utility scale project. So does that add more complexity to it from kind of your point of view, or does it make are there savings that can be made there?
No, it's not a problem of complexity for sure. We can, it's a problem of competitiveness. At utility scale, we can afford to deploy power conversion system of larger size. For instance, now we have the maximum size that we deploy is 9.6 meg. So it's a huge outdoor inverter, outdoor PCS that we can do it. So in utilities case, it makes sense, and you can enable you to save a lot of money. On the other side, on the CNI, I think that it's much more complex, and it's very challenging. On our side, we had some experience in some project, mainly in off-grid application, in hybrid application with PV, wind, battery storage, and diesel gen. And it's quite interesting from a technology perspective, but from a competitiveness and cost perspective, it's very challenging. So on our side, as I said, we focus on utility scale. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And then just very briefly, Tim, kind of from the electrics point of view, I'm guessing you will have maybe done some CNI work with solar. So have you done any kind of with battery energy storage systems or?
Yeah, well, we are mainly a utility scale project company, but since or because I agree totally to what Stefan said, it's pretty challenging. You have to analyze, you have to do a lot of analysis work for every business case for the different customer sections. We have done that actually for Europe and UK, and therefore we have prepared a solution, trying to have one solution that fits all. Yeah, that's a nearly 100 kilowatt hour solution based on automobile batteries actually, because they have a higher, very high fire safety. So that's actually what we are now proposing for the moment, in combination with some control systems. But for example, in the US, we have never been trying to do that.
Okay, so it's interesting that, I mean, kind of everyone agreeing that it's certainly a more complex industry. But I guess going forward, you know, as you say, you've tried to come up with a kind of one solution fits all. So maybe going forward, we'll see kind of the case becoming clearer and maybe more of these CNI installations occurring. So I think we've had kind of quite a good discussion around the general EPC area and their kind of role within energy storage. So I'd now like to kind of open the floor up to questions from the audience. So if you post some questions in the chat box, and I'll try and direct them to the right person. Okay, so this is a question that I guess was related to our talk earlier. And maybe I'll point this one back to you, Tim, as you just kind of mentioned that you've kind of looked at business cases for, we've done lots of analysis of business cases for CNI, and I've done it for utility scale storage, I'm sure. So, you know, what's the role of EPCs in ensuring that projects are bankable?
Well, first, main thing is usually warranties. So what warranties may we provide in order for the customer to back its business case with a certain safety or probability of this business case really happening. We cannot warrant the market, but we may warrant the technology. So that's one thing. Second thing is, I think that has been mentioned by Matteo as well as Stefan, bankable suppliers. We have to do that. And third is, I think as all three of us, we have pretty strong, pretty mighty simulation environments behind. So we have to prove that the business case is really viable. It makes sense. It works. It works over 10 years. That has to be backed by simulations. So, and in the end, this all has to convince the guys deciding about financing. So that's what makes bankable.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And so, Stefan, we've got one here directed at you. So, how do you validate your assumptions in your inputs for your model, and what research does the company rely on?
Yeah, so you know, when we model the business cases, actually, it depends on various factors. Of course, you try to get real life data, historical data on the one hand side, model it off of there, make the assumptions for the business rules. That is primarily true for grid scale energy storage right now, like the various frequency response signals. You know, UK is a very prominent example. I'm pretty sure everybody of us three here has modeled extensively on this. Yeah, you typically take several years of back history. On a CNI project, for example, then you get into the challenge, well, how do you get reliable data for this? Yeah, and but typically you can obtain this. At least, you know, when people are serious, they do have this, and of course it gets better in Europe, particularly with the energy efficiency initiatives driven by the EU, where data gets collected, data gets archived, yeah, and so on, so that you can more and more really zoom in into the correct assumptions you want to make for offsetting this data. Yeah, and as Tim was saying, yes, we all have server-based simulation engines for all these business cases. It needs some tweaking for the individual case, always. So, but overall, these engines are there, and you can make a very good accuracy assumption for this.
Okay, fantastic. And then, maybe you can each put your own views in on this as well, because I guess it will vary for each of you. But Matteo, starting with you, how do you see the kind of costs changing in the EPC sector? Or I guess not in just the EPC, in the energy storage sector. Do you see them coming down in line with the costs of lithium-ion batteries, for example?
Yes, yes, of course. I think that the cost reduction of the battery, namely the lithium ion, has been driving down obviously also the EPC cost, as we saw in the last 5 years. I mean, the lithium has a decrease from 2009 to 2015 of almost 30%, and now we expect in the next 4 to 5 years a further decrease as aggregate of minus 50%. So we expect that the EPC cost will be dramatically following back to back this trend of cost reduction of the battery. So
okay, yeah, fantastic. And I guess rather than asking the same question to you, Tim, I wonder. And you kind of mentioned earlier, as you, Stefan, the kind of different chemistries out there. So, I mean, have you had any experience with Chinese factories? And also, we here at BNF, Bloomberg New Energy Finance, expect Chinese manufacturers to move towards NMC chemistries. So, have you had any experience with them? And do you expect the chemistries they're producing to change over the coming years?
First, a short answer to that. If we have tested Chinese, all the batteries we have tested from China so far were all lithium iron phosphate. So the new NMC batteries from China we have not yet tested. We are looking forward to do that. So that's maybe a pretty short answer. But we believe that there strong players will emerge from this side, since the LFP or the lithium iron phosphate has developed significantly over the last years. But maybe one more comment to the last question still I wanted to say. You were asking if does the EPC cost will reduce as much as battery cost. I can say from the experience in PV, where we have monitored that since 2001, we always had a close to half-half ratio between module cost, PV modules, and BOS, balance of system cost, right? This has changed over time a bit, but relatively, the reduction has been very much alike on both sides, on PV modules and on BOS. And in batteries, we expect the same, actually. We have done great reductions in BOS already, in balance of system already, the last years, more than the battery cost, actually. This will change a bit in the next years, but it's still, over the long run, it will be a congruent and a symmetric decline. And there's a second part of the answer. For the moment, the battery cost, what we get from the suppliers, is not only cell, it's module. That means it's casing, BMS, and so on. And this, for the moment, is comparatively expensive. So I expect a large reduction there as well, because cell costs are already pretty cheap, cheaper than most people believe, actually. So, but it's a lot on module cost for the moment. And there, I think a lot of reduction will happen as well. Okay,
fantastic. And so I'm aware we're running out of time quite rapidly here. So Stefan, maybe you could answer this question about, is there a challenge to guarantee performance since it's a software control that's more dominant in the system, compared to for a wind farm?
Yeah, so I mean, generally, when we talk about guarantees and so on, I mean, the regulation you have on the wind farm is probably more to inside the individual wind turbine, and you're making static adjustments to it. To the rotor speed, wing through wing tilting and whatnot. But in an energy storage system, what drives this is really a rules engine to charge and discharge coming from a sensor network. It is slightly different, but it is a role. It is definitely I would say the dominant role also for the state of health of the system. And that again, or in turn, will then lead to a performance score and the longevity of the cells and the modules over lifetime. And this is something where basically we see the role of the software control system optimizing the various impedances and the various cell resistances in the overall build or design build, and that goes for the primary element, the battery systems, as well as Tim was also saying, a balance of system, where the costs have come down, but there's also a control element, particularly when you talk about HVAC control. That means cooling of the systems and preparing the operating environment for the use of battery energy storage.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And so then, just quickly, and this may be a one-word answer. Have any of your companies, and Matej, starting with you, had experience of using lithium iron phosphate in larger installations over 10 megawatts?
Unfortunately, we haven't the chance to deal with it.
Okay. Tim?
Not larger than 10 megawatts, no.
No. Okay. And Stefan?
Yeah, we probably have to retrofit one of the systems soon.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Sorry. Let's see. This last question from Gregory Magayev. Are there any guiding, and Tim, I'll direct this at you as you've obviously done quite a lot of solar. Are there any guiding principles for the PV ratio to storage with network connections at 132 kilovolts? It sounds quite specific. Maybe you know more than I do.
Well, but this all depends on the business model, what you want to do. So if you want to do peak shaving, then it depends on how much capacity you need. If you just want to use do double use of assets, like the 132 kV transformer, you just want to double use it for PV and for frequency response. Then you need to look at the transformer. Usually you can overload it for a short period of time, because frequency response is time equalized. Over time, it's netted out, right? So over time, the transformer will not be overloaded, even if it is already at the max of its limit of its capacity. So usually, if we have like we did that just recently for an EFR project in the wind park. So yeah, like if you talk about 5 to 10% of let's say 5%, maybe 10, depending a bit on what it is, what you're exactly talking about, that you can nearly always add as battery to an existing PV or wind park.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Fantastic. So I think we're coming up our hour now. So I'd like to thank everyone who's kind of been watching the webinar. And to summarize, I guess we've talked about the different roles of EPC and how they have to rely on warranties, and how it's easier to get kind of your equipment from larger manufacturers because you get better warranties, and that CNI is an area that we will see kind of developing in the future, hopefully, as the business case becomes more practical. So thank you for watching, and please check out the energystorageforum.com and come and attend the Energy Storage Academy happening next month in Berlin. We also have the 11th Energy Storage World Forum in Berlin next May, and just preceding the Energy Storage World Forum, we have the 5th Residential Energy Storage Forum. So please check out the website and come and attend. Cheers. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for attending.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.